Hey everyone, this is Chris Miller and you're listening to the EduMind Podcast. If you're an architect, project manager, or a nurse, or maybe you're just curious about these career paths, then our podcast is one that you're not going to want to miss. Each week, we'll be talking to subject matter experts, course instructors, and other special guests to bring you the latest and greatest in architecture, project management, and nursing, and a whole lot more. Now, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting EduMind podcast. My name is Chris Miller, and I have Jeanie Fan back with us for another round. So let's welcome her back. And Jeanie, if you want to kind of just update everybody, if there's any new listeners to kind of who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm an architect in New York. I've been practicing for a while and a licensed architect. So here help everybody who want to get past the ARE exam and on their licensure.
Sounds good, Jeanie. I know we've had a lot of fun. We've spent some podcasts talking about the ARE, preparing for the ARE. Today we have a more light, fun topic. We're going to talk about style in architecture. I'm sure this is something that we could go on and on about because there's so many different types and styles. But let's start off with a simple question for you. Or at least maybe on the surface, it looks like a simple question is, so why do we have style?
I know. I think that's one of the questions people are always asking about it. And I think this somewhat will be kind of ARE tangent as well. You kind of, it will ask because about referencing about architecture and history and not just the day-to-day practice. So why do we have style? Well, at least this is from my way of looking at it. I'm sure there are some historian out there is like cringing after they hear what I have to say. But actually style, I think it comes from the different locations and different over time, and also how people adapt to their location and material they have access to. This is usually tied to mostly because of location, region, and then the access of resources to build a certain type of house that to accommodate certain climate. So, but over time, as technology comes, everything becomes more common. Things that could, material could be accessed usually from one place and now could be transported to a different place. Mm-hmm. And with the proliferation of photographs, it becomes like an image to recreate instead of something of a lifestyle or a tied to use and function of the house. So I think it has to do with just, I think the image, the birth of the photographs has ties a lot to do with this. Because the longest time people were just, they had mud, so they had access to and water, and then they build a mud hut and straw. So if you look at indigenous homes, those are reflection of climate, location, and access to material.
No, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, a lot of it, we'll talk about this in our topic here shortly about regionalism and how that affects, the style of architecture. Makes a lot of sense, like in the Northeast, lumber, plentiful wood houses compared to the Southwest where they use the adobe style or the Pueblo style homes. So I got a question, is like, everyone, when it comes to style, most people think of clothing, right? Oh, what are the current trends? Or, back in the 70s, you had bell-bottom jeans, things like that. So what styles are clients asking for these days?
I think people always call it the modern, but that word is so many ways to interpret it. It's, like modern by the, historical movement or but that also kind of had changed and evolved over time. The mid-century modern is almost not even modern anymore. It's like over 100 years old. So what is modern? And I think a lot of what people are relying on, definitely magazine photograph, now the internet, it's like the certain look, the more simplified kind of, I want to really dumb it down. It's like the clean, less ornate kind of look. And that's usually what people want right now. It's kind of comments like, oh, I want a more modern look. But then it's like, okay, so what is modern to you? You guys should actually talk to the client, because there are also modern way to do like a country home. It's just meaning, you still have baseboard, maybe a crown molding, but it's a simplified version. But it also ties to their lifestyle, and there's a renovation instead of ground up of what their vision is of their home. So usually when people say they want modern, talk to them a little bit longer. Ask them, now images is also good reference, so can you show me an image of what you consider modern?
No, I agree with you. It's like you go into a hair salon, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, how do you want to style your hair? Oh, I want a modern hairstyle. Well, it can mean so many different things, right?
So many different things.
Absolutely. A photograph would help, or an image that you can find on the internet. So, no, I agree with you in the sense that the word modern, it's not a textbook answer, right? There's not a definition that fits everybody. Your idea of modern might be different than mine. I think a lot of people, what they do is, maybe they have an existing home, and they're watching something on TV, and they see like a Kardashian home, and they're like, oh man, that's modern. We got to have that. So then that becomes their ideal of what a modern home is. So it's kind of interesting, that, modern is, you think on the surface, it's such an easy thing to define, but it really isn't. As you said, there's so many different aspects that go into it. It's just like style. I mean, what's a modern style? What's old style? As we kind of talked about here earlier about, regionalism and how style is often depicted by where you are geographically. But nowadays, as you mentioned, sometimes it's based on what kind of resources that you have available where you're living and wanting to build. But nowadays, people will ship those resources to wherever they want. Let's say, you grew up in New Mexico, we'll say, and you're used to the Adobe type or Pueblo type homes. And now you're moving somewhere where, maybe you're moving towards the Midwest. You're like, man, I want this style. Well, you know what? You're going to do what you can to get that style out there. So it's no longer, I guess, style isn't necessarily, I guess, dependent on where you live as much. So that brings us to this interesting topic of regionalism. And I know you briefly touched on it, Jeanie, but maybe you can expand on it. What is regionalism?
Well, I think we hear about it a bit less recently in the academic world. That kind of came from there. Is about 10, 15 years ago, there was the slow food movement. And then also there's a lot of, again, also actually has to do with sustainability. So instead of transporting all these material from miles and miles away, are we creating a style or certain type of home in a climate that doesn't work? So there's a kind of a movement kind of like, let's do more regionalism, that you design in that place, houses, buildings have to fit with that climate. So it was a word that's actually, I have quite some books, because around the time I was applying for grad school, that actually my own application to grad school, the personal statement was about talking about site. How do I site a building? So it's like, how do I use the local resources and climate and the geography to locate a building that will benefit the most to the occupant of the building, and also, energy consumption and all that, because how you orientate a building, that has a huge effect on sustainability. And so I think that was it. I just haven't heard it more recently. Maybe also kind of just folded into more sustainability now. Just everybody is a little bit more aware of it. So it's kind of in that bigger conversation.
No, I agree. And, there's many great things about architecture. One of the things I like is that, you could go out, you could walk down a street and you could see 10 different types of styles of architecture. And that's actually one of the great things about living here, is that you don't have to travel to a different country to see a different style of architecture. For example, I grew up in LA, And then we moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, where you're 7,000 feet above sea level. You get a lot of snow, and I started seeing these homes that had these A-frame type roofs, and I'm like, what the heck are those for? And then people said, well, that way the snow just slides off and it doesn't sit on top of the roof, which could cause damage to the roof. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then later on, I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I start seeing these homes. And I'm like, what the heck are these? They're Pueblo style, or they're made out of basically they're Adobe type home. They're mud, but they're great because they insulate the home to where they're dry heat, and the summers in Albuquerque are pretty hot, but the inside of your home stays relatively pretty cool. So I'm like, man, I've traveled just 3 states that are hours apart from each other, and I see 3-4 different types of architecture. So that's pretty cool. I know that you've gone from West Coast to East Coast. And I think you had a stay in Texas as well.
Yeah.
So can you maybe talk about some of the, I guess, architectural style differences that you've seen from, LA to Texas to the Big Apple?
Well, I think that's one thing that when the term modern really kind of dilutes everything. So like definitely our current age, time and era, just everybody is all looking for that certain style that they see on magazine cover when, at airports and news, everywhere, or just on the internet. I actually been seeing mostly almost a similar stuff across the country, because we all looking for that. Oh, I want a big glass window, inside, outside. But just, as you move across the country, you have different climate. It's just not really suitable for that. Mm-hmm. But because of proliferation of images, and that's what people, and also the rise of better building technology. Now we have super insulated glass, right. That you could do what the West Coast is doing, have all these big open window, everything's all airy, and you still do it in Texas when it's somewhat more humid and dry, some area, but insulated because you just close it off and cranked up your AC. Right. And because also our air conditioning technology also has gotten better. And now in the East Coast as well, people also asking for the glass box. But it's not quite suitable. But if with enough money and cost, you could buy the best technology to achieve the look. But again, it's kind of really disconnected from the origin of a style or certain lifestyle.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You're right. Because it used to be that you could travel across the U.S. and you'd be like, okay, I'm here, I'm going to see this type of a style. I'm here, I'm going to see this type. But you're right now with, money allows you to bring those styles from areas where they're dominant into areas where they're not very dominant. Great example was the glass homes that you brought up, right? Yeah. California, the great views, you have, homes that have many glass windows, the temperature is pretty mild. So it makes sense. And then you move to Maine, and now you want these glass houses. They don't make sense on the surface, but like you said, you can get these super insulated glass homes that allow you to have those styles. So that's interesting that it's no longer divided by geographic location as we once were. That is interesting. So we talk about sustainability, but what are some of the environmental benefits of sustainable architecture?
Well, definitely less energy use. That's before. Well, when it start construction, we should kind of use material that's doesn't need to transport that far away from it. Definitely shaping the house a form that accommodates the local climates and definitely orientation of the house. If you have facing your house kind of western sun, you're taking all that heat. Right. It's gonna heat up your house quickly. Then you're gonna crank up your HVAC, your AC bill and heating and all that. So actually, when Lee, the Sustainability Council, when it first started, they had points for they have improved quite a bit. But when they first started, just have different points for using, dual flush toilet is a point, and then there's one point for orientating your house correctly, but they should not be equal. There's such a huge impact for orientating your house correctly compared to just installing a dual flush toilet that you can use less water. So, I mean, they have improved tremendously over the years, but these were when the early stage, when people are trying to create all these checklists to help, which is architecture, no, but with certain gotten detached from it, that they and builders sometimes, not just architect designing this, and builder just building homes without considering these. So all these organizations, movement that are trying to remind people that these should be considered, and so to help the overall kind of energy consumption and use and sustainability.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, like you said, I think you used to put a lot of more, I don't want to say thought, because maybe, everyone's still thinking about what, something before they plan it and they have it built. But, back before maybe there was this type of technology available, you really had to plan and think out all these different things, right? I mean, orientation of the home, you want to make sure it's not in the direct sunlight during the hottest time of the day. That way your air conditioning isn't, running all the time, or make sure you have maybe dual pane glass to keep the house insulated. You used to have to maybe think about these a little bit more than you do now, because now, like you said, super insulated glass can help take care of the insulation issue. So it is interesting to see how technology's played a role in architecture over the years, not just in the building of it, but the planning as well. So do you have any experience with green or sustainable design?
Yes, actually, in California, one of the houses, he came in and just like, build me the greenest house you can. And this was about 2008-ish,
Okay.
And, when the Lee and all that first started. So we were very excited, and we were doing everything we were trying to help him. But again, at those points, also, it's kind of sad. Sustainability comes with a cost as well.
Right.
You have to pay more to get things closer by.
Right.
And also in terms of the architect's fee and service fee, to get all the certification is actually extra work as documentation, the things we'll have to prove, keep all the receipt tracking, all that. And they have to now hire a green consultant who's to kind of keep an eye on, where things have to be, give advice, things that could be greener and use more sustainable technology. And then the house also had to go through tests to make sure it's completely insulated. So all of that starts to really add up.
Right.
And then, so how do we help a client to balance that cost? Because a lot of it is spending on, literally at the end, a plaque. I mean, are they really going to hang the plaque on their house, or is it something that's more, comfortable? So we kind of, like my boss at the time would call it, we don't just wear green on our sleeve. We do it kind of more, it makes sense to the client. So we kind of decided everything that they can see and touch, maybe all the wood that will be sustainability certified, get all the stamps and certificates for things that will be sustainably harvest and all that, and low paint and low VAC, and then, but maybe some of the just basic framing material, because if you're trying to get back then certified FSC certified wood framing, those are also a huge upcharge from just basic getting a 2x4 if they just frame the house. So we're trying to do a balance, and also we thought orientating a house definitely. How do we create all these big overhangs that they can block, the summer sun, but also get the light in the winter. And so we didn't go through the whole certification, and we kind of saved that money, but we did go through some of the tests to make sure the house is tight. So that was a kind of pretty good balance that, we didn't go through the whole certification, but we did the best to kind of what the kind of budget makes sense and the time for the client. We installed a photovoltaic on top of the roof. So even he wasn't able to install all of them, but we will prep all the kind of the little points that where he can put more solar panels later. So it was kind of more stage planning, and at the end they moved in. It's not like a stamped LEED certified home, but it was but they were happy and they felt like they achieved what they wanted. So yeah, I think now with the things, people are going more for that now, maybe a little bit easier and more accessible. But in 2008, when even Lee was just kind of just starting.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know there was so much that went into making a house green. It's funny, we usually, when you talk about solar panels used to not be a big thing. And over now, I mean, you see them all over the place. Especially out in those areas like Southern California, I see them quite a bit. Areas that maybe there's not a lot of, dust or dirt, sand buildup, things like that. But yeah, I didn't know there was that much planning that needed to go into making a house green. That's pretty cool. So you've mentioned LEED certification. What in the world is it, and how do you go about acquiring it?
Actually, someone could be an architect, or actually anyone could be a LEED certified. I think you go through a course and also take an exam that you're aware of all this sustainability factors and what it needs to achieve. I think back then I started doing it, but then I realized also the number crunching. I felt like I calculate how much fly ash is in the concrete mix to make it more sustainable instead of just pure concrete. But then I'm like, well, it's rounding up or down, and then you're like, either I pass or not pass. But it's like such a not quite. I'm sure they have changed it right now, but I wasn't quite convinced that was sustainability. I think they have updated. I'm probably not the person to ask what the latest LEED qualification right now, but that is trying to hold people. They have a list, a checklist, to remind people, hold people accountable what they should do to make sure a building is green and sustainable. So I think they still talk about having, providing bike storage so that your employee or worker that can have access to bike, and you have shower, you have dual flush, things will be automated so that people don't let, water running, orientation, light pollution, you shouldn't have lights that just kind of polluting. You have, some offices or factory where they have a big parking lot, you have a lot of parking lot lights that could create light pollution. So yeah, it's a lot goes into sustainability. Even the AIA contract, ARE study, they will ask if is this a sustainable project? Because if it's answered yes, there's a different kind of interaction between the architect and the client. This is actually, you have to state if this is like a sustainability pursuing project.
Oh, that's interesting. So, we talked about style, we talked about trends, we talked about green, and, we all know that over time, trends and styles change. Some go out of style, come back in later. Some last longer than others. But do you think green is more of a fad that's going to die out, or you think it's here for the long run?
I think it's not one. We are on board, and it's actually, we're not doing enough in a way. There's so much more we can improve and change, and then also, so in New York, there's the new school actually in New York City, and has a department called material research. And there's actually a lot of research been done on building materials as well, how to make them healthier for people, better for the environment. There's just so much going on. It just, it's just, that's a little sad, and none of this is going as quickly as we wish. Right. And also a lot of legislation will need to change before we can actually implement some of these better decisions. Like I didn't know that, well, like in public or commercial space, they show if you have like curtains or anything of fabric, those need to be fireproof, right? Protected. They have to spray something on it too. But I didn't know that during a fire, if it does start to burn, the fume from that fire retardant is more toxic to you than the fire or the burning itself.
Oh, wow.
So this, so it's not just like, oh, I fireproof everything, just spray on the fire retardant on any soft surface and say that, well, it's done. But it's not, while those retardant are curing when it's fire, it's toxic to people. And also, it's actually a long-term effect. It's not just like, oh, after the air out, it's done, but it slowly kind of emits into the environment. So it's a long-term effect. And then if there is a fire, that it's the toxin, it's getting, spreading it out even more. So, but how do we need some kind of legislation change that you don't just spray on the retardant? We need some, because right now it's by law that you will have to treat all the fabrics in the commercial space that they need to be fire treated.
That's interesting. It almost seems like it has a negative connotation too, because it's more toxic than the fumes themselves.
Yeah.
So, we talked about sustainable architecture and, how sometimes somebody that's looking to build a new home wants to implement all these sustainable type architecture in there. So is it that sustainable architecture is only applicable to new buildings, or can, let's say I had an old building and I said, hey, Jeanie, I'm wanting to make this more of a sustainable type building. Is that something you can retrofit to an existing building?
Yes. Actually, yeah, that's actually what some of the people do. So the older building that you trying to maybe preserve pretty much maybe just a facade because of historical value, but inside it could be retrofitted. And then, yeah, Lee has new building guidelines and old building and renovation guidelines. And I'm sure, I think there's even more different kind of certification out there too, even back in the Bay Area that have their own Build It Green. So it's like a simpler checklist. And I forgot to mention this, kind of in different location. Actually, if you doing, well, maybe now it's more common now. If you're doing some kind of certification, sometimes help you faster to get your building permit. Oh. At least there was some incentive back then, but I think now probably a lot of it already folded into each city's own kind of permit requirements. I think even the Hamptons now, any house you do, you have to do an energy model to prove that your house will be kind of at least sustain itself, kind of have its own.
That's interesting. Today's topic's been a lot of fun, Jeanie. We talked about regionalism and how it used to be that we can drive across the U.S. and know exactly what type of architecture you're going to see in in certain places. That's not necessarily true today because you can always move resources if you have enough money to do so. You can have something from L.A. brought out to New York to build and have that style. We talked about green architecture, which is great. How sustainability is not just a fad. I think it's here to stay. As we're coming to the end of the podcast today, we're in the holiday season. Christmas is just around the corner, and you're in a great city for it. So what have you done to kind of spend some time in where you're at for the big holiday season?
Oh, I don't know. It's like I'm a true New Yorker now. It's like you hate what you love, kind of. Like, I don't go to all the touristy stuff, but it's been really nice going down. I'm in Brooklyn, all the townhouses here, people have the decorations, some of them go all out. So that's actually been pretty interesting. I haven't really actually been into the city. When you're in Brooklyn, you call Manhattan the city. It's like, I don't go into the city. As often, it's as if it's really far, but no, it's only a half an hour train ride. and so there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of all those pop-up little kind of booths that with local craftsmen making their stuff. I think the one in Union Square is actually the most popular, and I like going to that one. I remember shopping there for holiday gifts, and then also on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday they have the farmers market. So it's like a very busy area, and I love doing it. I just get my grocery and also shop for all the small gifts and stuff.
That sounds like fun. When I think of New York and I think of Christmas, two things come to mind: Central Park and Rockefeller Center. So are either of those two on your holiday list to visit, or are you just good with avoiding those two areas for the holidays?
I'm good at avoiding those. It's I see a lot of or sometimes we walk by with friends and they just Instagram was like, oh, the ice skating ring is up,
So we're 10 days till Christmas. So what holiday plans do you have, Jeanie, going into the end of the year?
Not much. I don't know. It's just so, of course, some downtime. As well, this is kind of stuff that the West Coast don't get. Like a lot of office closed between Christmas and New Year. It's just kind of like a given office holiday.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's a great time to kind of, recharge and just kind of sort it out. So and the West Coast, it's just all sunny every day. There's no snow in, and it just like keep going.
Oh, I know. I think my brother lives out in the inland. I think it's still in the 70s. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's 29 here in Columbus. So you get that Christmas feel. Jeanie, I had a lot of fun with you on these podcasts. I'd love to maybe get you back before the end of the year, see if we can't end the new year together on a podcast and celebrate the new year together before we go into 2022. Any last words of wisdom you want to share with the audience here today?
No, not much. Let's see. Well, it's been another difficult year for everybody, and I think let's just hang in there. Hang in there. It's almost there. It's almost the end of the year.
Absolutely. 2021 is almost behind us. To everyone out there, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy holiday season. Jeanie, let's try to get you back.